Good evening and welcome to the Rogers TV Leaders Debate for the 2024 New Brunswick provincial election. I'm your moderator, Andrew Holland, and we are coming to you from the Tom Morrison Theatre at Fredericton High School. For this debate, we invited the leaders from all currently or recently elected parties in New Brunswick. Participating tonight are from the Green Party of New Brunswick, David Kuhn; from the New Democratic Party of New Brunswick, Alex White; and from the Liberal Party of New Brunswick, Susan Holt. Blaine Higgs, the leader of the Progressive Conservative Party, and Rick DeSaulnier, the leaders of the People's Alliance, declined to participate. Joining me tonight to ask questions to the party leaders is Silas Brown from Global News. The rules for the debate are as follows. Each leader will begin with a 2-minute opening statement. The first leader will then be posed a question and they will have 60 seconds to respond. The remaining leaders will then each have 60 seconds to respond to that, followed by a 3-minute moderated discussion on the question. At the end of the debate, each leader will be given 90 seconds for a closing statement. Before we begin, I want to commend all candidates throughout New Brunswick for having the courage of their convictions to put their name on a ballot and to run in this election, and for caring. So I want to thank each and every one of them for that, along with their volunteers. Whether it's scrutineers, drivers, people installing the signs, this process doesn't happen without your involvement, so thanks to you as well. A random draw to determine the order was held before the debate, and the first question will be for Mr. David Kuhn. But before that, we'll start with the opening statement with Mr. Kuhn.
Thank you very much, Andrew. In this election, leadership matters. What you hear in this debate matters, but actions speak much louder than words. My 10-year record as an MLA and opposition leader is an open book. There'll be no surprises about what a green government stands for. It's all in our platform, which was launched today. Concrete, practical solutions that fix the multiple crises we face. As my constituents know, I'm a problem solver. I find solutions and I act on them. That's what we need. The problems that plague us, a crumbling healthcare system with the unavoidable deaths and suffering that go with it, unaffordable rents, skyrocketing power bills, and the risk we are facing from climate breakdown and the consequences of that must be solved. No more kicking problems down the road, no more Band-Aid solutions pretending that they're some kind of a solution. We'll make the generational investment that is needed to fix our healthcare system. That means putting the money into people, not buildings, so we can get the healthcare we need, when we need it, and where we need it. We'll bring in a permanent rent cap that applies to rental units to safeguard tenants against unaffordable rent hikes and to protect tenants from rent evictions when the buildings change hands. We will target the financial assistance where it's going to do the most good. Credits on power bills for low-income consumers to cancel out the power rate increases we're going to get. An increase in social assistance rates so no one has to live on less than $1,000 a day. And a major tax cut for small businesses who are struggling to keep their doors open. And we'll invest to protect New Brunswick from climate breakdown. This means, for example, legislation to require the telecommunication companies to provide universal cell coverage across the province. We need to be climate ready, and we're not. Your vote matters. You can be the change if you choose.
Thank you, Mr. Kuhn. Now to Alex White of the New Democratic Party.
Thank you very much. Pleasure to be here. Yes, I'm Alex White. I'm the leader of the NDP. I'm from Quispam-Cis, where I was born, where I was raised. Je suis le chef de NPD. Je suis tellement bilingue, pas parfait, mais when we have to look at what's coming up in this election, what we're really looking at is what we're hoping for, not just for the next 4 years, because what happens in this election is not going to carry on for 4 years. It's going to carry on for the next cycle and potentially the next cycle. We've seen what successive governments have brought us to. We've got innumerable crises. We've got crises in housing, in healthcare, in education, environment, cost of living. And these aren't things that happened in the last 4 years. They were merely exacerbated. an NDP government would look at making the necessary investments with a balanced budget that will provide solutions and genuine help to cure these crises. We can look at supporting the students in our education system. We can look at providing the infrastructure that people need to get to work safely, efficiently. We can look at providing investments into environmental standards that are stricter than what we're currently about to meet. We can actually take proactive action here. We can look at the fact that people can't afford to buy groceries and pay their electricity bill at the same time. The NDP would put forth a universal $200 power rebate. We would provide a grocery rebate to our lower and middle income earners. We can look at the fact that the healthcare system as we have it right now is under immense strain, and it's going to take more than just throwing a bit of money at it to fix it. We have to reanalyze how we're doing it. We have to be able to bring in and support those coming up in the field, and we would be able to do this. We would partner with universities, with the New Brunswick Medical Association to ensure that we have the professionals where they're meant to be. This is a vote about the future of NB politics.
Thank you, Mr. White. Now, Susan Holt from the Liberal Party of New Brunswick.
Thanks, Andrew. My team and I have been listening to New Brunswickers, and all across the province we hear the same thing. This election is about our healthcare system. After 2 terms and 6 years of Blaine Higgs, our healthcare system is worse than ever. 180,000 New Brunswickers don't have a family doctor. And those people who do can't get an appointment within 5 days. Take Dave, for example, who I met in Champlain Heights on Monday night when I was door knocking with David Alston from St. John East. Dave has been on the waiting list for a family doctor for 3 years. And so he had to go to the St. John Regional Hospital ER. He went at 2 o'clock in the afternoon a few weeks ago, and he wasn't seen until 2 o'clock in the morning. And everyone across New Brunswicker has a scary healthcare story like Dave's. Healthcare workers are leaving in record numbers. Nurses are leaving this province in record numbers because Blaine Higgs has refused to invest in them, in their working conditions, and in their futures. It's clear that our healthcare system can't survive another 4 years of Blaine Higgs. A Holt government will respect and care for the people who are caring for us. We'll put in place the 30 collaborative community care clinics that doctors and nurse practitioners and nurses and patients have been begging for to make sure that you have access to primary care close to home. We're also focused on making life more affordable for you. We're going to take the tax off your power bill to save you 10% every month. We're going to put a rent cap in place. We're going to save you 4 cents a litre off the price of gas by removing the Higgs gas tax. We're going to overhaul the broken property tax system, and we're going to put in place a universal school breakfast program and pay what you can lunch program so that every kid in New Brunswick has food at school. Team Holt is the only team to have a full slate of 49 candidates and have presented a fully public, balanced and costed platform. Vote Team Holt for a brighter future, to have a healthy, affordable place to call home.
Thank you. The first question will go to David Kuhn of the Green Party. Silas.
Thank you, Andrew. Our first topic is healthcare. Mr. Kuhn, many New Brunswick hospitals are struggling with wait times at their emergency rooms, and the province's health authorities have been working to bring those wait times down over the past year. However, they still exceed national guidelines for urgent patients by a sizable margin. What would your government do to reduce wait times for patients needing urgent care?
This has been a long-standing problem. The ER doctors first raised it back in 2014, 2015 with an open letter to the Liberal and Health Minister pleading for them to up the staff and take some other measures. We would finally act to ensure that they have the staff they need. Like at the Chalmers in Fredericton here, the emergency chief has been calling for an additional doctor for the last 10 years. We will ensure that all of our ERs have the staff they need to properly serve the people they're supposed to be providing emergency medicine to. And that is a question of investing the money to make it happen. Not just spending money to spend money, but investing it, because there will be returns and save lives and reduce suffering. And we've got to fix the primary care system to reduce the number of people who have to access the ER. But the many people who need to access the ER are not being cared for well now, and we'll fix that.
Thank you. Mr. White, you have 1 minute to respond.
Did you know that there are doctors who are trying to come to New Brunswick who are being told there's no spaces, that there's no slots for them to fit into our system? That's a travesty. When your healthcare system is in this kind of situation, that is a terrible thing to know is going on. The NDP would build 40 collaborative care clinics across the province because the strain on our ER is extreme. You have people going for things simply because they don't have family care. Increasing primary care is important. We'd also partner with the Medical Association and the universities to ensure that we promote and grow the medical experts here in New Brunswick. We can offer them positions, we can retain them here, but in the immediate term, we have to take the doctors who want to come here to help our system. We have to put the money and the resources where we can to ensure that people don't go spend 12 hours in an ER waiting room. That's what we would do.
Thank you. Mrs. Holt, 1 minute.
Thank you. The wait times are far too long for New Brunswickers. Only a third of New Brunswickers can get in to see their family doctor within 5 days. And as we've all just talked about, people are waiting for hours and hours and hours at ERs. People are waiting for years for surgeries that they need. It all starts with retention of our healthcare professionals, because those healthcare professionals are the ones who are going to help us recruit new people to this province. And so our team has been listening to the doctors, to the Medical Society, to the Nurse Practitioners Association, to the nurses at the Nurses Union, to the physiotherapists, to the pharmacists, to all the different healthcare professionals that want to be part of the solution. And they tell us it starts with primary care. We have to transform the way we deliver primary care, which is why the Holt team is committed to the collaborative, team-based environments in your community close to home so that you can get care at 7 a.m. or at 7 p.m. from the right person at the right time. That takes the pressure off of the ERs and lets them see emergencies faster.
Thank you. We'll now have a 3-minute moderated discussion on the question. Obviously, I'll go to Mr. Kuhn. This costs a lot of money. A major undertaking like this, where would we find the resources, I guess, to address this, and how much will it take?
Well, it'll take less than Blaine Higgs' HST tax cut, which is about almost $500 million. We say the investment, a generational investment, will be about $380 million, but instead of his tax cut, which gets you nothing, our $380 million investment will actually get us a fixed healthcare system. It will help solve problems. It will help hire doctors, nurse practitioners, nurses, and other allied health professionals, put them into collaborative family practice teams, and retain nurses and doctors, family doctors who otherwise might leave for the other maritime provinces or already have left, and get them back, because we will pay an equivalent salary and benefit package to ensure that that happens.
Andrew, I think it's important to connect the other end of the healthcare spectrum to this, because we have to transform primary care. That's one of the bottlenecks at the ER right now. But one of the other challenges in our hospitals that's adding to the wait times is the fact that we have 550 seniors who call the hospital home. When I was up at the Chaleur Hospital, we saw that there were 5 people to a room who were living in the hospital. At Stella Marista Kent, there was a woman there for 3 years living in the hospital and calling it home. That is no place for a senior in New Brunswick to be. So we need to make sure we have the long-term healthcare solutions that help bring seniors to a more dignified place to receive care. Our team has proposed really boosting the home care system with better wages for the people who are delivering home care, recognizing and valuing the care work that friends and family and informal caregivers are doing with a $250 a month informal caregiving benefit, because that invisible work is so valuable to our system. It costs a lot less to have someone at home with an informal caregiver than the cost of that person in the hospital. We need to make sure we're valuing care and paying great wages to the staff in our long-term care facilities, so that can also take the pressure and the weight off our hospital systems.
I want to give Mr. White a chance to weigh in here.
Appreciate it. That's a very valid point. I mean, the other side of the healthcare system is really, really important. That's why the NDP would invest immediately in 250 more long-term care beds. And when it comes to home care, and when it comes to things like this is a public good, and it should be run through the public system. We would bring this sort of stuff back into public ownership, public use. That way there's no profit margin on the care of the medical services that are given out to those in our healthcare system whatsoever.
I think we have to be careful about the promise of more beds, because right now we have empty beds in nursing homes across New Brunswick. And they're empty because we don't have the staff to fill them, because we haven't paid the right wages or supported the nursing home community. We don't have a contract in place for nursing home workers. We have a government that hasn't recognized the issue. So there are empty beds across the province waiting for the leadership that will recognize and value care and make sure that we can transition seniors into those dignified care environments.
We'll stay on the healthcare topic because it has been a major issue in this campaign. And we'll go to Mr. White. Delivering primary health care has remained a persistent challenge in the province. We just delved into some of this, but most parties have proposed the use of a collaborative care clinics to address the issue, an idea that's been around for more than 2 decades. Mr. White, why would you be more successful in implementing this model than perhaps previous governments?
Because we'd actually implement the model. It's been talked about for quite some time, like I say, 20 years or more. And when it comes down to it, there's just been no political will to put the situation into practice. So we would work with the entire medical association, medical professionals from all stripes, nutritionists, physiotherapists, mental health therapists, doctors, nurses, LPNs, and we can find ways to bring these people together in the parts of this province that need it the most. And that's primarily, we think, rural New Brunswick, but there's a lot of people in the main cities who need better access to primary care. They deserve it, and we can provide it. We have the budget to build 40 of these clinics across the province. That would take a huge strain off of what's going on and guarantee that the 180,000 people who don't have a doctor can still get the primary care they need without having to go spend hours waiting in our ERs.
Susan Holt, 1 minute to respond.
Thank you. I really appreciate this question because this is the critical question of the election. How are we going to address primary care, and how are we going to keep and attract the professionals to deliver it? When we have a government under Blaine Higgs that has completely ignored primary care, refused to meet with the medical society, refused to meet with the nurses union, put commitments in a plan toward primary care. The first pillar of that plan said he was going to eliminate the wait list, and then didn't do any of the actions in the plan, and the wait list has ballooned to 4 times the size that it used to be. We need to listen to what the doctors and nurse practitioners are telling us. And they're telling us they can't make a go of it in primary care anymore because they're taking on the lease and hiring employees and dealing with billing. They're spending more time on paperwork than on patients. So our collaborative clinic solution takes the administration off of their plate so they can focus on you. We changed how we pay for primary care so that there is care on offer at 7 o'clock in the morning and 7 o'clock at night. We've been listening to the healthcare professionals that are going to help us tackle this.
Mr. Kuhn, 1 minute.
The reason we haven't got collaborative care, family practice teams with physicians, nurse practitioners, nurses, physiotherapists, mental health counselors, dietitians, and so on, is because no government, Conservative or Liberal, have been willing to put in a funding model to ensure that those team members get paid. Right now, the expectation is that the physician or nurse practitioner, if they tried to set up a similar collaborative team, would have to pay it out of their income. That's not possible. So we need a funding model that the Department of Health provides the income for the team members to make it go. If we don't do that, it's not going to go, and that's a significant part of the investments we're committed to making in fixing the primary healthcare system, along with bumping up the salaries and benefits that our nurses, nurse practitioners, and family doctors, so they're equivalent to those in Nova Scotia and PEI. So we bring them home who've gone there for a better income, and keep those that are here working here.
We'll now have a 3-minute open discussion, and we've talked about how to remunerate people. I'll raise the issue of nurses as a big part of this because just last week they made the comment that they're the lowest paid nurses in the country next to Quebec. So I'll start, Susan Holt, what would you do to raise a government raise salaries for nurses?
Well, we have to get back to the negotiating table because salaries for nurses are negotiated with the nurses union, and our team is ready to sit down with them and get those wages up to a level that respects the work that they're doing, the critical importance that it has, and is competitive with neighboring provinces like Nova Scotia. We're going to put in place a retention bonus immediately because nurses have been waiting for far too long and have worked through horrific conditions when retention monies were sent from the federal government to Mr. Higgs, and he didn't deliver them to nurses in this province. So we will right away say thank you, and please stay with us with a $10,000 retention payment to nurses in this calendar year so that we can then tackle the changes that they want to improve their working conditions. They're asking for improvement to the cost of their long-term disability, a change to how the retirement age is treated. They want access to vacations that they can schedule flexibly. So we have to deliver those working conditions with the retention incentive that will keep nurses in the system as we make those changes.
Mr. Kuhn, thoughts on?
Bonuses are nice, but the reality is we've got to be paying nurses a salary and benefits that are equivalent to those in New Brunswick, in Nova Scotia, and Prince Edward Island. Otherwise, they're going to continue to leave. Like the nurse I met in Moncton the other day, who told me that the best thing I could do for her was to bring her home because she's working in Amherst, because there she was getting better salary, better benefits, and she had a permanent full-time position. That's still a problem. Our healthcare professionals are still not able to get, in some cases, full-time permanent positions. Seems ridiculous. I know of a nurse practitioner who's been looking for work, can't get it in New Brunswick, wants to work here. There's something very wrong in the system, and that's got to be fixed.
It's actually
Mr. White, I want Mr. White to have an opportunity here.
If we're talking about trying to fund our healthcare workers, we can look at where we're spending our money. These travel nurses that have been coming in have been costing the government a substantial chunk of cash. And there's no way that you can ever argue that a travel nurse is less expensive than a local nurse. And we can take the money, the hundreds of thousands of dollars that are going to this program, and we can use that to raise the salaries and raise the standards of living and the standards of working of the nurses and the professionals in our system. We can match the bonuses and the salaries that are put out by PEI, for example, for all healthcare workers, not just nurses. There's a lot of things that we need to be able to fill the gaps in our healthcare program. The resources are there, they're just being misused, and we can put them where they're supposed to be.
The reality is that Higgs has not wanted to implement primary care, and our team is committed to doing it.
The next question will be directed to Susan Silas.
Ms. Holt, this question is on housing. Earlier this year, New Brunswick's population surpassed 850,000 people. Many municipalities are struggling to build new housing fast enough to accommodate these new residents, and partly as a result, the cost of home ownership and rental units has increased severely. What is your plan to help the province develop new inventory to meet these needs?
Well, this is one of the questions that we hear at the door a lot because New Brunswickers have experienced huge increases in their costs. We've seen rent go up in New Brunswick more than 34% in the last 4 years. In last year alone, our rents went up more than 10%, the highest rate of rent increases anywhere in Canada. And we see the same with property taxes, growing at 30 or 40%, getting to the point where I knocked on the door of a senior the other day who had received her property tax bill and said, I can't afford this. I can't afford to stay in my house. But when she went to look for an apartment that she could find, there wasn't an apartment she could find less than $1,400 a month, which she also couldn't afford. What is she supposed to do? A Holt government is going to put in place a rent cap to ensure that there are predictable and stable rents for renters going forward. We will overhaul the property tax system because right now it is out of control. It is based on fluctuating market rates. We need to listen to municipalities that are telling us they need more categories, they need the tools.
Mr. Kuhn, go ahead.
We need to initiate a building boom in non-market housing, cooperatives and nonprofits. Non-market housing is affordable by definition because profits aren't the motive that is driving the management of that housing stock. So New Brunswick Housing Corporation belongs to the people of this province. We will make sure it has a mandate to work with nonprofits, faith communities, service groups, and others to build nonprofit, non-market housing, and make sure that happens in terms of the financing. Right now, those organizations have to find their first tranche of financing elsewhere, not from our own Crown Corporation, but elsewhere. So we would require NB Housing to be the first in with loans and support to get those projects off the ground. And that would be a major change and a major way of contributing to this building boom. As well, we would change the property tax system so that apartments with low rent income get low property taxes and low taxes.
Mr. White.
Housing is the municipality's responsibility, and that is a major problem. The municipalities don't have the resources or the ability necessarily to build all the units to fund all of the shelter beds that are required. The province can do that. The NDP government would build non-market housing at a rate of 500 units per year. It's not what we need, but it is what we can do as a start. We would also take the provincial part of the HST off of building new market rate housing, because we need to be able to make it easier and faster for developers to build the housing that we need. And for those who are homeless right now, we can take funding for shelter beds off of the shoulders of municipalities. We can bring that into provincial coffers, and we can invest in protecting and saving the people who we all see in our cities right now are struggling the very, very most. They deserve better, and so do we all.
We'll have an open discussion. Silas will lead this.
You've all spoken about creating a building boom, about seeing the amount of inventory increase and doing that through building. But Ms. Holt, we've heard time and time again from industry associations that finding the skilled trades workers to make this happen is an extreme challenge. So how will you address that portion of this?
That's a great question, because it's a critical portion of this. And there's two ways that we're going to address that challenge. One is through focused grants for training to get people into trades education, to make it easy for them to say yes, because we've covered the costs of them studying to gain their red seal, to get into their apprenticeship. We need more workers in our construction industry. The rate of retirement is escalating dramatically, and companies that want to build in New Brunswick, even though the conditions haven't been there, don't have access to the labor. We also need to really focus our immigration strategies on people that are going to come and help us build the homes that New Brunswickers need. And then we have to be able to recognize their credentials when they come here so that we can get them on the job site and building those homes.
I do want to hear from some of the others. Mr. Kuhn, when it comes to public housing in particular, this need is very great as well. Can you talk to me about that?
Well, we need to fast track, and we would fast track certification for tradespeople. There's a lot of tradespeople in New Brunswick who are unemployed because they're working on the slow process of getting certification. They've come here as newcomers, as immigrants, and they're extremely frustrated. I met a man at the door the other day who has a tremendous career as an electrician back in Syria and worked in a variety of types of jobs over decades, and yet he can't get work here as an electrician. He can't even hold the lunch pail for an electrician, and we've got to change that. There's electricians and carpenters and bricklayers and plumbers out there who are ready to work, but they can't because the certification process is difficult, long, and laborious. So we will change that to make sure that those folks who are already here, who have the skills, who have the experience, can go to work in the trades.
Mr. White.
If we're talking about public housing, I mean, this is so crucial. I mean, I lived in Waterloo Village in St. John. That's where I spent my last apartment. There was, even before COVID, there was housing issues in this area. And it's only been exacerbated by the removal of a rent cap, which we would reinstate at 2% permanently. And if we're talking about building public housing, there's thousands of people on the wait list. We need more than just a drop in the bucket. This needs to be a concerted effort. We need to work with municipal and federal governments to get these things done, get them into the hands of what everyone needs, and make sure that we can get the people who are currently living in tents with winter approaching off of our streets. We have moved beyond a political and economic issue. We are into a moral wrong. This is something that we really genuinely have to make a societal effort to change, and the NDP will do so.
Thank you. We'll now touch on education, and this question is directed to David Kuhn. In May of this year, the New Brunswick Teachers Association warned that Anglophone schools in the province could see more than 1,000 teachers retire in the next 5 years. Combined with New Brunswick's population growth, this could lead to a situation where there may not be enough teachers to meet future demand. What would your party do to make sure New Brunswick students are getting the best education possible?
Teachers have got to be able to do what they know best, and that's teach, what they're trained to do. There's an extreme frustration in the education system right now that teachers are having great difficulty in creating the learning environment and the teaching environment that they need. So teachers are leaving in increasing numbers, which is very worrisome. So one of the things we need to do is address the system of how classrooms are organized. We need to be able to ensure that those folks who need special attention in terms of learning plans get it. We need to ensure that those folks who need extra enrichment get it. We need to ensure that everyone can reach their full potential. And right now, a single teacher in a single classroom is expected to deliver that whole variety of teaching, that significant variety and diversity of learners. And it's not possible. It's burning them out, and we've got to address that by returning to a way we used to do this.
Both my parents were teachers. My sister was briefly a teacher. I was briefly an ESL teacher. People leave jobs because of burnout. We're hitting the point of retirement, but we have to understand where the retention aspect is really starting. We're dealing with a system that has been underfunded, underprotected even in the eye of the public. There's been such a growth of lack of trust in public education. We looked at, for example, we mentioned the growing population. To build enough schools to shrink current class sizes by 4 would take 24 schools. 24 to shrink it from now, and hiring about 1,000 new staff. We're looking at a situation where we have to collaborate with the education professionals from all aspects, teachers, HR, guidance counselors, administration, maintenance, and we have to figure out the correct path forward to protect these jobs.
Susan Holt.
Well, thank you for a question about education, because I have 3 young kids in the school system right now. I have a grade 2 and a grade 5 kid at Connaught and a grade 7 kid at George. And I would be remiss if I didn't shout out that we're here at FHS. This is the school that I graduated from on this stage thanks to an amazing teacher named Mr. Miles. I had phenomenal learning experiences because we had teachers who had resources to deliver extracurricular programs and more. We don't have that in the school system in New Brunswick today because it's been neglected by Mr. Higgs. We're short almost 200 teachers. And I went around the province and toured multiple schools, listened to teachers and EAs and guidance counselors and resource. And what they told me is they need stability. We need stability in our classrooms and schools, and that means we need qualified, certified teachers in classrooms. We need those school psychologists, we need those EAs, we need those teachers. We're going to put an incentive in place to encourage people to study education, and then we're going to put incentives in place to get teachers back to the classroom.
We'll now have an open 3-minute discussion. How do we keep the teachers that are looking ahead for the exits? My brother-in-law in Bathurst, longtime teacher, he decided to retire early. Same with this partner, both teachers at ESN. How do we encourage teachers not to leave early to try and maintain them in the system? Mr. Kuhn.
We have to return some of the ability of teachers and the administrators in their school to manage their schools, to manage their classes, to figure out what's the best way to organize the classes, the best way to teach their students so they reach their full potential. And in recent years, more and more of that authority has gone up the ladder into the school districts, which are now large bodies covering a huge area of geography in the province. And that's a real problem. It's kind of like what's been happening in the healthcare system. So decisions that influence the ability to teach effectively are being made remotely from the schools and don't make any sense at the school level. So we need to return some of that authority to our teachers and their administration to run their schools in the best interest of the kids.
Just in the interest of time, whoever wants to chime in.
Well, and along the similar note, we have to get the politics out of education. That is a clear and present situation. The politicization, pardon me, of your child's education has been going on for too long. Teachers are the experts. The educational system is full of experts from all walks of life in every case. We need to listen and hear them when they say what's making them leave. And you're going to hear poor job conditions. You're going to hear long hours. You're going to hear insufficient resources. You're going to hear all kinds of things that are making people who have given their lives to one of the most noble professions in the entire world give up. And I've seen it happen to teachers. I've seen them go on antidepressants because they can't handle their job anymore. We have to do it.
What we're hearing from teachers is that they're doing 10 jobs in one. They come to school in the morning and they're helping put clothing on kids that don't have them. Their desk drawer is full of food because they're trying to feed the kids in their classroom who can't pay attention to a teacher when their bellies are full. They are serving as a counselor, a mental health resource. They're doing all sorts of things when they want to be focused on teaching. So we need to make sure that we have all of the resources in place that can support a teacher to do what they do best. Mr. Higgs and Mr. Hogan have created chaos in our education system by disrespecting teachers. And even right now, Mr. Higgs is driving around the province with a bus driver, and we don't have bus drivers for the kids in this community to get to and from school. We need a government that's on top of this file and can make sure that bus drivers and custodians and teachers and school psychologists are recognized and rewarded, because our kids' education is the best investment the provincial government could
Thank
make.
you. We'll go on to the next topic, poverty reduction, and Silas will pose this question.
Thank you, Andrew. According to a report by the Human Development Council, the estimated living wage for New Brunswickers is now well over $24. New Brunswick's minimum wage has increased to $15.30 per hour in recent years. Would your party consider an additional increase in the minimum wage in the province? And if not, or in addition, what other actions would your government take to try and pull more New Brunswickers out of poverty? Mr. White, you have 1 minute.
Yeah, absolutely. The minimum wage is nowhere near where it should be. I think it was 10 to 15 years ago we were saying we needed a $15 minimum wage. It's been 10 to 15 years. We have to look at what the cost of living really is. So not only would we raise the minimum wage by $5 over 4 years to $20.30, we would look at all kinds of other ways to alleviate those most stricken by poverty. There's a grocery rebate that we've proposed, which would effectively double the HST rebate for those low-income earners. There's the universal rebate on power. There's the fact that we can increase the child tax benefit to a reasonable amount, because right now it is $250. We would put it up to $1,200. You want to talk about poverty reduction, we would guarantee free lunches in schools, K to 12, taking the money that parents are spending on these resources for the kids and putting it into our coffers.
Thank you, Mr. White. Ms. Holt.
Thank you very much. We need to increase the social assistance rates in New Brunswick, because we have effectively institutionalized poverty in New Brunswick with social assistance rates that are below the ability to live in this province, and locked in at that level by this government, who said that they can only rise at the CPI, at the Consumer Price Index or inflation rate, when they're already locked in at a level that's below the poverty line. So we have to increase those social assistance rates to the right level, so that they cover the cost of food and housing, and that they increase going forward. But that's not the only thing we need to do. We need to make sure that people who are working on social assistance aren't penalized. And right now, you're only able to work a certain amount, and then everything else gets taxed and penalized. There's no incentive to go out there and get a good job and get a better job and earn more money. So we're going to increase the capacity of New Brunswickers on social assistance to earn extra wages without the financial penalty that's in place right now. There's a number of other things we're doing to address the cost of living for New Brunswickers. I think we'll talk about that in the open round.
Thank you. Mr. Kuhn.
Well, we need to eliminate deep poverty, and that's what we will do with a guaranteed livable income. We'll negotiate that with the federal government, and by the end of a 4-year term, it will be ready to implement. In the meantime, however, we will raise social assistance rates by 20% to ensure that nobody in this province is earning less than $1,000 a month. We would raise the minimum wage, absolutely, similarly to the NDP, to $20 and change by 2028. And that with respect to the power rate increases, our approach there is to say, let's target it to the poorest, the people on the lowest incomes, under $70,000 household incomes a year, and provide a credit against those power rate increases so they have no effect on their power costs.
We'll now have the open 3-minute round, and Silas will moderate that.
I've heard a lot of those solutions that sound quite similar coming from the three parties. So I'll start with you, Mr. White. How is your party different than the other two standing next to you in terms of how you look to address this, when so many of these proposals sound quite similar?
That's fair. When it comes down to it, poverty is a holistic issue. Virtually everything we've talked about today has an impact on or comes from the poverty levels. You want to talk about social determinants of health, poverty is way up there. That's providing a strain in their healthcare system. The NDP is and always has been the party of working people in this province. People who are working for less than they deserve, people who are working for less than they need. We're talking about people who are working for such low amounts that they're having to turn to food banks. They're having to turn to other social assistance programs because working a full-time job in one of the richest countries in the entire world isn't enough to secure you a decent living. That's where our people are from. That's what we've always been based out of, and it's what we bring forth to government.
Mr. White, yeah, thank you. I'd like to hear from the others about how your party is different. Mr. Kuhn, you have accused the Liberals during this campaign of ripping off some ideas and not going as far as a Green government would. Can you talk to me a little bit about that?
We would replace the social assistance system with a guaranteed livable income that would get people up by a livable wage. That would eliminate deep poverty and would reduce the overall poverty rate significantly. I'm convinced that that is the solution. Liberals and conservative governments in the past have tried other things and they have failed, they have failed, they have failed. Poverty's gotten worse. So a guaranteed livable income that would replace the social assistance program would be the way to go. But in the interim, we need to address the poverty that's in front of us now, and in particular, those people with disabilities who live in poverty have to be pulled.
That's an important topic, but I'd like to give some time for Ms. Holt as well to respond.
Well, it's a great segue, actually, because one of the things that we're looking at is exploring a basic income for people with disabilities in New Brunswick, because the disability benefit is also far too low in this province. And about 35% of the population of New Brunswick are people living with disabilities. So we have to recognize the added cost of that reality, that there's extra equipment, there's extra challenges to life that means you have to spend a lot more money, and the current disability benefit doesn't allow for that. So that's why we're exploring a basic income there. But I want to go back to one of our key promises, because there are a lot of New Brunswickers struggling, and we have a plan to have targeted supports for people on income assistance, but there's middle-class folks that are having a hard time paying the bills, and 10% off their electricity bill that is for everyone will really make a difference.
Thank you. We'll stay on the poverty topic and some of the root causes of some of the symptoms we're seeing of poverty. Some municipalities are saying they don't have enough staffing or financial capacity to deal with escalating social issues resulting from individuals experiencing poverty, mental health, addictions, homelessness. Signs of it are happening in many communities. People are sleeping in rough conditions. So this question is for Susan Holt. What will your party do to collaborate with municipalities in support of people who need a hand, but also giving municipalities greater supports?
That's an excellent question, because it's something municipalities in this province have been asking for. And interestingly enough, it was on the housing file where municipalities were looking for provincial support on the housing file. The federal government was offering support on the housing file. And this provincial government under Mr. Higgs said, no, we want to get in the middle of it, and we don't want to allow that support to go to our municipalities, even though they weren't at the table helping municipalities address the homelessness crisis in their communities. It's complex, but there's a number of things that a Holt government would do. We have to start by putting in place some of those treatment facilities, the long-term residential beds that allow someone to get through a full recovery from a mental health issue. It's not something that they can do with 5 days in a facility. They need proper residential treatment beds across this province. We also have to partner with municipalities to put in place the fiscal reform that they've been asking for, because they don't have the financial capacity, because the Higgs government failed to deliver fiscal reform. A Holt government will partner with municipalities to give them the resources to tackle this problem.
Mr. Kuhn, 1 minute.
Well, here's the thing. When it comes to mental illness, Liberal and conservative governments have starved that side of the healthcare system. It has been the poor cousin of healthcare in this province for decades. And it's time that that changed. We're seeing the consequences of that. People on the street with serious mental illness who are self-medicating with drugs and alcohol and are homeless. So we need to up the budget for the Department of Health so they can do a serious job of addressing mental health in this province. We need to ensure that people can access the kind of psychotherapy and mental health counseling for free that is the underlying cause, the root of their addictions, to get at the traumas, the childhood traumas that are there, to actually deal with the root causes of things like addictions and homelessness.
Thank you. Mr. White.
So we're talking about how we're going to partner with municipalities. We would simply take some of the costs that are currently burdening them off of their shoulders. We can take off costs of shelter beds. We can take off costs of public transit. We can bring that into the public system. We can invest that money into public transit in other municipalities. We can bring back an intercity public transit system. We can take costs away. We can help modernize the tools that these cities have to bring in revenue and take it away from just being property tax increases, because there's no reason that they should just have to jack that up to increase the amount of money. If we're talking mental health, it should be in Medicare. Mental health is something that the NDP would put into Medicare. So everyone in this province gets a guaranteed minimum of 5 free visits to mental health professionals. And if you need more, there's ways to apply for more through it. We all deserve health from head to toe.
We'll now have the open 3 minutes and a broader discussion. Municipalities just feel that they're ill-equipped to deal with a lot of these issues. Is this something that, Mr. White, I'll start with you, is this something that would warrant having a broader discussion with the Union of New Brunswick Municipalities, like a summit or something, to try and provide supports and a serious dialogue to sort of get to this, to determine what steps can be taken to help them out?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, this is a situation where municipalities are struggling. They're not able to do what they need to do to provide for the people in their limits. So what we have to do as a province is to look at how we can free up funds for them, how we can give them more tools to gain revenue, how we can take some costs off them so they have this money to invest into social goods, to make lives better, to be able to deal with these issues that are popping up, and without having to resort to, underfunded systems.
I want to let Mr. Kuhn, Ms. Holt chime in.
Municipalities are struggling because the provincial government has not been doing its job. They're seeing these social problems because the provincial government, Liberals and Conservatives, over years and years have failed to address social problems in this province. Whether it's poverty, whether it's mental health, whether it's addictions, they have failed. And so we need a provincial government, like a Green government, who would take the responsibility and be the adult in the room and do their job rather than worrying about the next election and getting reelected and doing measures that are simply designed to buy votes or shopping for votes. We need a government that will focus on the job it was hired to do, and that is ensure that the public services and policies that are necessary to safeguard people in this province and address social issues are done.
Ms. Holt.
Andrew, that's it. Municipalities aren't looking for another summit right now. They want action from the provincial government on mental health, because mental health care is health care, and it shouldn't be sitting off to the side, getting neglected for only people who can afford it to get access to it. So we're committed to integrating mental health counselors into the collaborative care model that we've proposed for primary care. We need to have access to those critical professionals, and we need more of them. So we've also committed to funding the residencies and the seats for people to study clinical psychiatry and clinical psychology, and we want to make sure we're filling those positions of school psychologists so that we can catch these situations early and support the kids and the families who really need it as early as possible to prevent people from finding themselves in homelessness. Then we also need to fund the programs that are on the ground. We have phenomenal organizations across this province doing work in community, outreach to support people experiencing mental health crises. A Holt government would provide them with $50,000 each to hire the people and support the work on the ground, because these are the folks that are seeing and experiencing it daily.
You. We'll now go on to our next question, which Silas will pose.
Thank you, Andrew. This is for Mr. Kuhn. Succession of Auditor Generals have warned that the level of New Brunswick Power's debt is getting to the point where the utility may not be able to sustain its operations. New Brunswick Power's debt is around $5 billion, and there are ongoing problems at Point Lepreau, and there are large-scale capital projects ahead in the form of the Mactaquac Dam and Beldoon. Ratepayers are facing double-digit increases potentially this year and the next. What strategies do you have to right the ship at the utility?
2/3 of that debt, according to the Auditor General, that NB Power holds is caused by its use of nuclear power in this province. The construction of Point Lepreau, the reconstruction of Point Lepreau, and the ongoing problems with Point Lepreau, which are driving the significant increases in power rates. So we need to move to a renewable future, and that's where we would go, away from nuclear. Nuclear is one of the most cheapest, or the most expensive sources of electricity there is. Solar and wind are among the cheapest. So we would ensure that NB Power has a mandate to tap into the tremendous wealth of renewable power sources we have in this province. We have a pilot project in Shediac that was done as a national initiative by the National Research Council and Siemens Canada, along with NB Power, to look at how to integrate solar into the NB Power grid and benefit financially their customers. It's a huge success. It took 6 years. It's done. We're ready to roll it out, and we're going solar in New Brunswick.
Thank you, Mr. White.
So obviously integrating renewables into the power grid is necessary. We have a commitment to have achieve a net zero emissions electricity grid by 2035. These are cheap, renewable resources that we would bring into the grid. But in terms of dealing with the immediate situation, these rate increases that are threatening to come down and overwhelm people who are already barely hanging on, we would end the subsidies to large polluters, to large corporations for NB Power. And we would instead redirect the money to the residential customers. Everybody in this province would be able to get some of that money that has been subsidizing corporations in the form of a power tax credit. These are just immediate steps that have to be taken. The long-term solutions are to steer NB Power onto the renewables path, get us off of the expensive fuels that we've been using, and make our grid environmentally and fiscally friendly.
Thank you, Mr. White. Ms. Holt.
Thanks for the question, Andrew, because NB Power's debt is something that keeps us up at night, keeps me up at night, because it's only been growing, and we're seeing rates increase for New Brunswickers year after year, and now those rate increases are getting bigger and bigger, and we're not making a dent in the debt. So things have to change at NB Power. They have done some cost savings exercises. We need to get more aggressive. We need to go further with finding efficiencies within the utility. We need Lepreau performing at the level that it needs to. It needs to be a 90% efficiency in order to deliver to New Brunswickers the value that it should. And that means we need to look seriously at partnerships, because we cannot do this alone. The Mactaquac Dam is a massive, expensive infrastructure project that we are going to need partners to fund. And NB Power reached out, actually, to look for partners on their Renewable Energy Expressions of Interest program. They received 200. We have really interesting projects like the Birch Hill Wind Project that St. John Energy successfully completed with Nagutkuk. It shouldn't take us 2 years to get one of those off the ground.
We have 90 seconds for a collaborative discussion here.
Well,
So open
can
it
I
up on
continue with that
additional
point a little
comments
bit?
between the three of you.
Because there are so many possibilities for renewable energy projects in this province, in partnership with First Nations in this province. Up in Beldoon with the Pabineau First Nation, there's been tons of interest and application to that REOI process. NB Power has said it's going to take them 18 months just to get through the list, at which point some of those applications are not going to be fiscally valid anymore because they were prepared years ago. We need that utility to be performing much better than it is today so that we can move to a renewable grid with 100% non-emitting energy utility.
I want to let the other two chime in.
We need to end the obsession that Liberals and Conservatives have had with nuclear power. It's costing us a fortune. We need to drop it and go to the most cost-effective, greenest, and renewable sources of energy that are available. Abundant sources of renewable energy in this province, wind and solar and run-of-the-river hydro, biogas. That's where we need to go, with a smart grid integrated with the grids around our province. Nuclear is costing us a fortune, and small nuclear reactors are going to cost us an even bigger fortune. Let's stop throwing money down the nuclear toilet.
Mr. White, quickly.
Certainly. So absolutely, the transition to renewables is one thing that has to be made, but we don't get there by dropping one of our biggest assets that provides dozens, potentially hundreds of jobs. We have to make a smart transition to these renewable economies and a clean power grid.
Thank you. We'll now move to closing statements for this evening. David Kuhn, you're up first.
Thank you. The problems facing New Brunswickers today are the culmination of 30 years of Liberal and Conservative governments making poor decisions and chasing failed policies, taking turns at getting us to where we are today, multiple crises. We need new leadership. A Green government would be different. Why? As Greens, we are grounded in a set of values based on fairness and respect for all people, communities, and the natural world that supports us all. In this election, we have an opportunity to turn the corner away from the failed policies of red and blue and toward a sustainable future in which everyone can thrive. I have served New Brunswickers in the legislature for the past 10 years. My record is strong. My vision is clear. You can count on me to act. We will do what needs to be done to save our healthcare system. Greens will deal with the housing crisis and the daily challenge of making ends meet. We'll make sure we are better prepared for floods and storms and heat waves that will only increase in intensity and frequency as our climate becomes more unstable. If you share this vision, I'm asking you to trust me and my candidates with your vote. We will respect and honor your trust in us every day in every action we take. Thank you and good evening.
Mr. White.
The various crises that are going on, and there are many, they're not the product of one election. They're not the product of 10 or 20 or 30 years. They go back beyond my lifetime. We're talking about successive governments for as long as anybody in this room has been alive that have brought us here with decision after decision after decision. And we have to look at exactly what gets delivered when people actually make a different choice. We looked at the fact that the pharmacare plan, that came in because the NDP held the Liberals' feet to the fire and made it happen. We look at the fact that the Canadian pension plan, Medicare, these are things that come in when voters realize that they can vote for what is genuinely in their best interest and hold the feet to the fire of these other parties who are in power. The NDP is the party of the people of New Brunswick, period. And we want to be able to put a voice in the legislature to advocate for what is best for the workers, for the people in this province, for the seniors, for the retired, for the teachers, for everyone. We have a vision of exactly how great this province could be, and it takes courage to do something different. So we're asking you to put an NDP voice back in the legislature where it belongs so we can make sure they get done. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Holt.
Thanks, Andrew. I came here tonight to share Team Holt's vision for a brighter future where New Brunswickers can have a healthy, affordable place to call home. I can't help but point out that the man who has left our healthcare system on life support, the man that has left too many New Brunswickers struggling to afford a roof over their head, couldn't even be bothered to show up tonight. For the past 6 years, Blaine Higgs hasn't shown up for New Brunswickers. Our team of incredible candidates have come together from across the political spectrum to offer a balanced approach to tackling these challenges with creativity, with fiscal responsibility, with partnerships, and with you. We're focused on fixing the healthcare system by transforming primary care to make sure that you have a healthcare home close to home and to ensure that seniors in this province have access to dignified care. We're going to make sure that your life is more affordable by taking the tax off your power bill and the Higgs tax off the price of gas. It's never been more clear that New Brunswickers want change. They tell us that Higgs has to go. Well, this election is going to be close. We need all New Brunswickers to come together, like Team Holt has done, to push for change. You have a choice this election. You can stick with Blaine Higgs and his wrong priorities, or you can choose a new team that has a realistic and balanced approach that is focused on you. On October 21st, I ask you to vote for Team Holt.
Thank you. That'll do it for tonight. I want to thank the three leaders for taking their time out of your busy schedules and your provincial obligations to join us. Thanks to Silas Brown for being kind enough to help pose the questions. Want to thank the high school students, the political science students here from Fredericton High for being our audience in the theater. And thanks to you at home who are watching on television or streaming tonight. My name's Andrew Holland. Please get out and vote on October 21st. Have a great night.